Sounds like a Surveyor song.
It does.
I woke up this morning, hungover and all. Oh, man. I love it. I love it. You know, I got to start listening to more country music.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I've been trying to get you. Well, I'm not really into country music as much, but
I like the hybrid type stuff, though. You know, not like the deep South, twangy stuff.
What's wrong with the Deep South?
There's nothing wrong with the Deep South. I'm just saying it's not my preference.
Okay.
Yeah. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
It has been a little while.
How long's it been? The longest we've gone in a while.
A week? That is a long time.
No wonder. So this episode is going to be a little bit different format than what we're used to. And what I mean by that is...
Is this a round table?
No, not a round table. It's just let's just get into it.
A discussion?
Yeah. Yep. So we have the one and only Trent Keenan with us.
As I live and breathe.
TK, how are you, man?
I am beautiful. Thank you.
You're smiling bigger than ever.
Always.
What's going on?
Not a lot. Just staying busy with work, right? So we made it past that first quarter, which I think some of us were all concerned about with where we were headed, but that was my goal. Let's make it through the first quarter and get a feel for what the rest of the year might be like. And
what's that feel like to you, Trent?
Yeah, it was about average. We're not too far behind where we were the same time last year, which on a record-breaking year, I can't complain. And so,
right.
But I will say, like, overall, the profit margins are way down because everything's way more expensive. Right? So that's the only. We're penny for penny where we were last year, but the profits are like
interesting.
They're down a little. So things are costing
we'll
more.
get into that a little bit on this discussion.
We will for sure. And this is just going to be just going to be a casual conversation about survey business or just business in general.
We can focus on survey and engineering business.
Yeah, because now, Sean, you have a pretty good feel for what it's like to run a survey business.
I do, actually. I have a pretty unique perspective on this.
You do indeed.
Ran several different types of, and continue to run several different types of engineering, surveying disciplines on the business side of it.
Yep.
But I am curious on, before we get into some of the topics, from what you think, Trent, on what's the rest of so you said you wanted to get through the first quarter. What's the rest of the year forecast for you guys? Is it still, let's take it one quarter at a time, or you got a backlog going, or how does the year look?
Yeah, no, I mean, we definitely have a good backlog going from a WIP standpoint, but I would say so far, I feel like we're maybe dropped a little bit, but I did notice from almost November through January, we were down almost 20%. And then January picked up a little bit, February, a little iffy, and then March seemed to March was good and steady. And March is always an interesting month because of so much of the spring break, right? So you lose with different parts of the country and different spring break times of the year, of the month. So it's really kind of an odd, you're like, oh, this week's really quiet. Or, well, everybody at home is on spring break, or, then you go to the next week and then maybe the different part of the country is on spring break. And so March is always interesting for me, but we ended up doing really well. And it was actually not until close to probably maybe March 25th, 26th, when we got like hammered with a bunch of work that last week. And I think everybody kind of got back to the office. But we noticed, obviously this is my 15th anniversary. And I noticed a lot of times when, like beginning of June, school got out, things are really dry, or the last couple of weeks before school goes back in, things get really dry. And so it's very based around the school years and people with kids and doing all these different things. So, but yeah, no, it's on average, we're kind of average where we were last year. And so I feel like, again, I'll go through up to June 30th and see how we do. But it feels good. It doesn't feel great. Obviously, it doesn't feel like last year, but it definitely feels good.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I'd say the same thing. It felt like everyone's talking about dips and all this, and it felt like we had a dip October through December, and definitely January. Weather also factors in. It was a wet winter in the Southwest. And then, February, March, and it's just taken off already. So,
yeah, agreed.
Would you say that those trends that we're talking about are pretty consistent historically? You know what I mean? As far as things slowing down at the end of the year, of course. And then,
this last year was a little slower at the end of the year than it typically is. Usually there's a big push. You know, we think, a couple of holidays, it's going to be slow, but everyone's trying to cram in everything before Christmas. And it's like, let's get this done before, half our workforce leaves and comes back 2 weeks later. And it seemed like we didn't get that big push. And I think, like Trent said, everyone's just kind of a little gun shy or a little worried. Right. And then January, it was like, hey, we're going to actually do this thing. And then before you realize it, March happens and it's like, okay, well, now actually, like Trent said, year over year, just about the same.
Right.
Things are costing more. Wages, obviously, wages are up, obviously. Got to pay these people more to keep good people. And we'll talk about that too, but.
What like when you say they're up, like if you were to apply a percentage of that, do you think wages are up 15% year to year? What do you think it is?
Actually, I just heard it on the way in, 4.6% from March year over year.
Okay,
and that's down from like 6.5% in January and February.
Yeah,
but on average, somewhere between 4 and 8%, I would say.
Yeah. What do you think, Trent?
Yep, I would agree with that statement. Yeah, from a wages standpoint, but then of course you get, which we'll get into, but health insurance for us, right? Our renewal is coming up in June 1st, and our health insurance is going up, I think 17.3% or something like that.
Oh,
so, yeah. So
brutal.
It's pretty brutal. It is pretty brutal. So those are the costs, obviously, that we're talking about, right? And
so how do you offset that? Because you can't raise your rates 20%.
Yeah, you can.
Well, you can.
You can do whatever you want.
I understand. And this is a great conversation. Yeah. You can definitely raise your rates 20%.
Yes, you can.
But if everybody else isn't raising their rates 20%, you are going to put yourself in a position to limit yourself to certain clientele, I suppose.
Sure.
And you got to get enough of that specific targeted clientele for it to make sense.
Well, I think it's not a question of trying to raise your rates 20%. I think it's little by little. Mm-hmm. What's the saying? Like, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah,
one bite at a time. And I like to do. I've had a lot of success in actually getting some hard numbers, and instead of just saying, "Well, man, everything's expensive now. Here's another 15% rate increase." It's no. One of my best clients, health insurance, for example, went up 17.2%. That represents, labor is 72% of my cost structure. Fringe benefits are 30% of that. So do a little math. That is a hard 3.8. I'm making the number up, but that's a hard 3.85% that I have additional cost today that I didn't have yesterday. Sure. And I think clients are more understanding of, okay, I get it, 5%, cool. Yep. When you put it like that, if it's just, hey, 20.0% across the board, seems a little aggressive. And then you're much more likely to get some competition when that comes in.
Some pushback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the bulk, obviously our business model, and I think most survey businesses is lump sum, right? And so you're not necessarily increasing your rates in the middle of the year. You're adding an hour here. You're adding an extra 2 hours here, right, to offset some of those costs. So 99.8% of our work is lump sum. And so all we're doing at this point is, throw an extra hour in there or whatever to start to offset some of those costs.
See if you can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you get a little bit of pushback to some degree, but it's,
Well, and let's face it.
It is what it is, yeah.
If you're not getting pushback, you're too cheap.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Who is this guy?
Hey,
I must be rubbing off on you this past year.
You taught me well.
I never would have expected you to say that, but yeah, exactly.
Your eyes lit up like
I know
Christmas morning.
Exactly. It's like, man,
welcome to the table.
Finally, welcome to the party.
Oh man, so
that's
funny.
Awesome.
But it's also like, for example, like Trent, you don't do a lot of construction staking, right?
No, we're down to about 17%.
17%.
Our business model is construction. Yeah.
What's your goal? I'm just curious.
Less than 20. So in between that 15 and 20, it's a sweet spot because we have 2 crews, 2 3-man crews that run construction, and we run 3-man crews on construction. And it's just that's kind of my goal. It's a good sweet spot. I mean, you gotta be able to offer it even if you don't do it. I would love to get to 0, but I know I can't. I mean, that's just never going to happen. We've built too many relationships over the years to be able to go to 0.
So is it? Obviously, it's by choice that you don't do a lot of construction staking. I'm assuming because the profit margins aren't what they are on the lump sum work for the most part, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
you spend more time chasing change orders than
right.
Yeah.
100%. And you also live in a state or a city where there are unions and dealing with prevailing wage and all that stuff, which also creates additional challenges.
Yeah, we don't do any prevailing wage, hardly any Davis Bacon stuff, and then we're down to 2 union shops left in Las Vegas. So,
oh, really? That's it?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not as bad, but yeah, definitely the prevailing wage obviously comes into play, right? So.
Yep, for sure. And, one thing I know about you, Trent, is you are definitely the type of person that, stays up on the latest and greatest technology and that type thing. What goes into the decision-making process when you're going to make one of those large expenditures on technology specifically?
Ultimately is how far we're going to fall behind the competition. And end of, pretty much in there because I've been, obviously a lot of people know Rob in our office and watching all his social media posts and stuff like that. And I've always been on him for the last couple of years about how far we are behind the schedule on some of this, whether it's the drones, the LiDARs, the scanners, that kind of stuff. We had the Faro scanner back, 2011 or something like that. So we were doing quite a bit of it. And what happened is the business grew so much. I was the only one doing it in the field. I was the only one processing it in the office. And so as soon as I spent more time in the office, well, there goes that knowledge that I could have passed on. And so ultimately, it's the decisions. It's never about money. It's about how far behind we might fall to the competition and how much more efficient we're going to be with the work, getting it done in the field. So, but again, sorry, before I cut you off, but before that, right? It's a day in the field is now creating 4 days in the office, right? To process that stuff. And so that's the flip side.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was going to go into is how far do you go into quantifying, you go to the trade shows and you see the latest and greatest and all the people we meet are awesome and great and super smart and they all say the same thing. Exactly opposite of what Trent just said. No, not going to increase your office time. We've got it all down. It's just all wins, win, 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 win. And those who actually, one, have to cut the check to buy the stupid thing, and two, have to figure out how to use it, know that there's a much more of a learning curve there. Yeah. So I guess my question for you guys is, how much do you actually quantify the benefit of buying that new piece of equipment? And can you ever get the clients to pay for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to do your homework and not just make a knee-jerk reaction when it comes to purchasing this stuff, just for that exact reason. I do think that most of the advances at this point are more on the software side. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously the hardware is advancing, but I think for a while there, the hardware advanced faster than the software, and now I think the software is playing catch-up.
Oh, sure. And then, what do you do with a 50 gig file? You just can't. Yeah. Hell, 90% of everybody out there can't even open the stupid thing. You really need to know what you're doing. You do. You have to understand the end user and what they're expecting and what kind of deliverable they're actually going to be able to benefit from. Right. And then at that point, what are you actually saving? And especially, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like it's just as hard to find qualified people in the office than crews to go out and collect the data. For sure. So if that's the case, that's still still about how easily can we process it and get a deliverable out the door. And that's the thing. So twofold, going backwards, creating a relationship with your vendor, right? Your Monsons, your Allen Instruments, your California Drafting, right? You can have a relationship with your survey supplier to be able to almost do an R&D when it comes to that, right? So we, at our place, we had them. We borrowed the X7, we borrowed the X12. We troubleshoot both of them, how much back and forth. So we spent a week or two with the X12. We spent a week or two with the X7, played with the data, and there's a, $50, $60, $70,000 difference between those two scanners. And so if one is, just as good as the other one, and the bulk of the work we're going to do is with an X7 or something like that, of course, we're going to go, and it's having those relationships with your survey suppliers to be able to have those toys to play with and kind of practice on them. And then, like you say, with the office side of things, you just got to work through the data. There's so much data, and it's hard to
it's hard to not just revert back to the old traditional, total station setup and just start collecting points, right?
Yep.
And at some point, you just got to cut it off and say, from here forward, we're going to scan this, right? And so, but we're still, outside of the really like weird parking garages and that kind of stuff, that's where we've been starting to run the scanners on that kind of stuff because it's so much better. The SX12s worked out really well for that kind of stuff. It's obviously a little bit slower, but yeah, no, it's interesting. We're at interesting times, and I love it.
And it almost seems like you said, all right, how long did it take you to figure out that the parking garages are the best place to use this because of these? So it's almost like you got to have it, use it for about 2 years to figure out the best types of projects and where it really saves you some money, and then by then there's a new one to buy.
Yeah,
no question.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's well, and we've always since the day we started, I was never going to be that one that just got stuck in that 2008 equipment, right? And so when we started, and so it's always just recycling equipment and keeping up with it. But I guess the conversation on that would be all of these little smaller mom and pop shops, right, where they just don't have those resources or have those funds available to do that stuff. And so that technology is more for mid-sized survey firms almost, right? And so mid-sized to obviously large survey firms. And so those are the conversations that I guess got to be had at the mom and pop survey places to be able to kind of break into that technology.
What is a mid-sized survey firm right now? What do you think?
Trent knows. He's got all these statistics. Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, we always joke about it. But mid-size, honestly, I would say mid-size today would probably be, a 15 to 20 person survey firm. Like that's.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. That's mid-size?
Yeah, for sure.
What are the statistics, Trent, about the various sizes of survey firms? It's pretty crazy.
7,200 surveying firms, 4,500 have less than 5 employees, 6,500 of them have less than 9 employees.
Whoa. Say that. You said 7,200 survey firms, 6,500 of them
have less than 9 employees.
That's like 90%.
Yeah.
That's
crazy? Why I say a mid-sized firm, right, is 15 to 20 people. Like that's a good size. We're 33, 34 staff, and it's way up there for a survey firm compared to the bureau stats. So I'll be interested when the new ones come out. That information was from basically that's the most published data, and that's from a 2019 data. So we'll see what happens when the next one comes out. But
that's insane.
It is insane.
Yeah, no, it's super insane.
What do you think the trend will be like when the next round of statistics come out? Do you think there will be more mid-sized firms because these smaller firms are getting acquired, or those folks are retiring? What do you think it's going to look like moving forward?
I think it's the other way, where there's going to be more solo practitioners.
More solo.
You can watch all the Facebook posts, right? Starting my own business. I want to go out.
Yep.
You can watch all of those, and I think it's just going to be more and more solo shops. That number is probably less than 5 employees is probably going to jump to 5,200, right? Wow. Is my guess. Just because there's the way the trend is, everybody wants to go out on their own, right? It's fun, especially when you're a smaller firm. It is enjoyable as you grow. Obviously, every one of us on here knows the growing pains of running a good sized firm. So. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's a good segue into kind of what we're really getting into here. And I'm curious, what do you guys think about this concept of the surveyor that really finally knows what he's doing, and he's like, okay, like you said, Trent, I just want to go on my own. First part is, why do you think most of the quality guys go on their own, other than some of the obvious? And then 2, how often and why do they work out?
Yeah, I wonder what the success rate is of somebody, deciding to go off on their own. How long does that firm typically last?
Yeah, that'd be interesting, especially now, right, where everything is we've been pretty feast for the last 6 years, right? Yeah. And so I was stupid crazy and started June 1st, 2008, which is the worst economy you could, outside of the Great Depression, pretty much. But and so I was able to build what we've been able to build over the years. And so I would say the success rate right now is obviously probably pretty good. But whether we end up into another recession or not.
And that's just purely on demand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just purely on demand. Yep.
I think where, as a profession, it could hurt us is a lot of like young, like new surveyors, like somebody who's newly licensed, maybe hasn't been working under let's say a business mentor for very long, decides to go out on their own. There's a hell of a lot more to it than just saying, hey, I'm going to start a surveying business. I'm going to get this equipment and I am going to start providing surveys. Surveyors stereotypically are not good business people to start out with.
Oh, I think you could take the stereotypical word out of there and just say that they're just not good business people.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's, if that is going to be the trend where, a lot of these surveyors are going to start their own business, I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Well, it kind of goes back to, okay, and I understand how it happens, especially because the nature of the business is usually you're out on your own a lot. So or you're driving long distances. So you got a lot of time to think. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh man. And I can tell you from experience, when you're driving 2 hours back and forth to a job a lot, you start to really question how you got to this point and what decisions you made or didn't make along your career to put you in this place.
Yeah.
So then you're like putting it all together and then, man, I can do it myself. I don't need any of this other things. I got 2 really good clients, so get me all their work. All I need is a little bit of startup capital, and then boom, I'm off and running. Mm-hmm. So that sounds all really good in principle.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it work all the time?
Well, those 2 really good clients, that work's going to dry up at some point. Then what are you going to do?
Right, exactly. And then what happens when you go get 5 more, and then all 5 of them want your service at the same time? Yeah. And now you're one little shop, then you got to hire 3 people, and that's where it snowballs. Right. So one, it's a consistent client with consistent work.
Yep.
And then the other one is obviously, I don't know if not anyone, but a lot of people starting a business, and I definitely didn't before getting into, building a new business, is understand cash flow.
Yeah.
I mean,
huge.
Cash flow is more important than your rates, and more important than your whatever you think your profit margin is.
Yeah.
And until you're so far in that you don't have to think about it, it is the most important thing.
It is, absolutely. And again, stereotypically, trends aside, surveyors are not good business development folks either, or marketers.
We're still on the fence on Trent too.
But how do you, like Trent? It's a great story. You started your business, at like you said, potentially the worst possible time.
I think it's the best time. I mean, it was the bottom. You had
that's what I was going to say.
Plenty of available staff. You can pick and choose the best guys to work with.
Yeah. Well, most people would think it was the worst time, but you could also flip that around, just like you said, Sean, and it was actually maybe the best time.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's crazy.
All the vendors are begging you to buy something. Everything's cheap.
Yep.
You got plenty of people looking for work.
Yep.
And the only thing you got to find is the revenue or the clients.
Right.
And once that started, everything went up from there.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So Trent, and like in your case, starting at a really potentially or on paper crappy time, how were you able to, build and sustain your business? How are you able to differentiate Diamondback Land Surveying from everybody else?
It was obviously just customer service, right? That's what I preach pretty much all the time. Anybody who's coming into the business who reaches out to me and asks for help, it's always, you got to be the best in customer service, and that's the friendliness, it's responsiveness to emails or phone calls, right? That's going to set you apart from pretty much anybody else. And we've talked about it on this podcast many a times. Like, it's so simple to just pick up the phone and you're going to end up with work sometimes, right? Because you're the only person out of 15 that they called. And so, but back in 2008, somebody reached out to me recently asking me just kind of some information on the numbers and how I grew after like year 1 and year 2 and year 3. And so I had put some stuff together for that guy who reached out to me. And it was interesting when I went back through it. I mean, we were like 90% construction when I first started. And so at that point it was early, it was construction, it was public work stuff that was getting done. It was the schools, it was, libraries, that kind of stuff that was all getting built. And then, it was just, building that relationship with kind of the GCs that would kind of roll into engineers or having those relationships with the engineers as you maybe ask them questions as it pertained to their plans, and you start to build that relationship. But as we went through, we were like 90% construction, and then it dropped to like 80 and then 70 after maybe like year 3 or whatever. And as we started to build up that clientele on the engineering side and all of our civil engineer clients and partners and that kind of stuff, is when we were really kind of able to start maybe taking less construction and then getting more into the boundary topos. Then then you roll into the altas through, just word of mouth. I mean, that's the only way outside of M&A, right? Mergers and acquisitions and buying other firms. The only way you're going to grow is word of mouth in our profession. And so it's being the best that you can be every single day. And that's responsiveness to emails and phone calls. Will set you apart from anybody else on down.
So it's interesting, and maybe this is a common theme for new businesses, but you built your business on commodity-based services, right?
Yep.
You mean staking?
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then you grew into less commodity-based services to more
professional land surveying.
Professional, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's just through kind of the nature of the beast. One, because of the time frame, again, right? That was really the stuff that was only in the works was a lot of the construction stuff or that public works infrastructure type stuff that was getting built. And so there really wasn't, civil engineers asking for boundary topos on a 2.5 acre parcel for a gas station, right? And so some of that stuff was just wasn't, that was kind of already being fed to the guys that were already doing the work. And so you really had to break through. And then a lot of it for me as well was just marketing. For me, I put together at one point like a 70-page magazine that I spent thousands of dollars on, that I put together myself and then had them printed and I mailed them to civil engineers. And just so it ended up on their desk. I mean, the different times from a marketing standpoint, which is hard to say 15 years ago.
Wow.
It's only been 15 years ago, right? But doing like a mass marketing of getting things on people's desks, but it was a good, tangible, thick portfolio of what we had kind of done in those maybe first 3 years or whatever. So being able to get that, I mean, that's a whole nother topic we could do, is like advertising and marketing today, moving forward. It's so interesting now as opposed to what it was 15 years ago. So.
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious.
What are you finding that's, what's different today from your marketing perspective than it might have been even 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Like what works, what doesn't work today?
What doesn't work today would be cold calls, right? Leaving voicemails, that kind of stuff. They'll never get returned. And you can talk to pretty much any sales guy when it comes to that. But our marketing is all visual based. And so it's the billboards or the sporting events and that kind of stuff where it's in the program ads as you're walking in. All of our stuff has to do with live sporting events, the TV commercials where you're watching live sporting events, all of those kind of tangible visual type things that kind of stick into your mind with little taglines or whatever, right? And so, or of course, the other side would be just social media, whether it's purchasing, boosting your ads or something like that on the social media side, right? Those are the differences. And then you can't, I'd still say 80% of marketing is word of mouth, and 20% is kind of tangible, visual type stuff.
Yep. And that word of mouth, type of marketing is kind of a slippery slope because, as we all know, it's like your reputation is everything.
Oh yeah.
And you could do 1,000 great surveys and then one bad survey. And unfortunately, that one bad survey.
Well, and what I've learned, it's not even you doing a bad survey. It's something happened.
Well, yeah, exactly.
And you got tagged on a project that had issues,
rightfully or not.
And most of the clients don't know the details.
Yep.
You can use the sausage factory analogy. Like all they know is the sausage was bad. They don't know how it was made, and they definitely don't know it was this, say that pig had a bad toenail or something. There's the one thing that made it bad wasn't all of it. It was just 1%, and you didn't have any control of that.
Yeah.
But still, the bad taste is still there, and you can't get rid of it.
Speaking of toenails, you definitely don't want to make sausage out of me.
Bad toenails. You got those yellow fungi little ones, don't you?
I'm kidding. I'm
It
kidding.
seems like you maybe have a terrible toenail guy.
I'm kidding.
And going back to that, right? You can mitigate some of that stuff by just the way you respond sometimes, right? And it's not a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe you want to type an email and you want to blast somebody, right? But the last thing you want to do is send it. So it's like
Don't hit send.
reword it,
Don't
read
push
it 3
send.
or 4 times,
Yep.
right? And so it's all in how you respond to an issue is how you're going to end up with, egg on your face or not egg on your face. And so it's that's the living lesson there, right? Type it so that you get the frustrations out and then delete it.
Yeah, and then delete it.
Start over.
Yeah. Well, Kent knows this well. Like, I'm a big proponent of, you have your phone, like there's all the tappy stuff, but there's a talky part too. And you can use the talky part and actually
Tappy and the talky.
speak to someone on a human level. And obviously email is critical. It's how we do business. It's how we document everything. Everything's followed up with an email. But the tone, what is gained, you can't infer tone in an email.
Yep.
And especially when in a mass email with several different people, the best thing is a phone call. Hey, this is what's going on. You're going to see an email. I'm sending it out just so everyone knows, but here's where we're at. Here's where I'm at. And it's becoming more and more rare, which means it's more and more useful. And I think that it has more effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
And I always feel better after that phone call. Even when we screwed up, even when you screw up and I have to call the guy and tell him, hey, he actually didn't screw up. Here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Always feel better. And turn it into a marketing tool. A good portion of the time, it's usually, hey, okay, that's great. Can you also do this?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm even shocked. I'm like, I just told you how we screwed up really bad.
Yeah.
And now are you sure you want me to do more? Sure, I'll do it. But it's just because you're actually talking to the person.
For sure. And it goes along with what Trent said. It's like how you react to, accusations, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are wrong, just say, hey, I messed up. I messed up, but here's what I'm going to do to fix it.
And I'm sure Trent can attest to this, is when you kind of get at this level, you spend more time talking about all the things that you screwed up than the things you actually did well. Yeah. And that damage control is the biggest part of our job, and actually damage control is one of the biggest things that I do to market our services.
Absolutely.
We did screw up. Here's what we're going to do about it. Yes, it was. Here's all the things that we've done to improve, and it usually turns into more work, not less work.
Sure.
And sometimes you're just not going to get it back. He's got the bad taste in his mouth. He's never eaten sausage again, and I get it. But I can tell you that percentage is so little, you can't even worry about it.
100%.
I've been in trouble on the phone before because I had a superintendent call and basically super irate and pissed because we had messed something up, and I kind of chuckled on the phone. He's like, "What are you effing laughing at?" I'm like, "Relax. Like, can you just take a breath? Like, nobody's died. We'll figure this out, but give it a second. Just take a breath for a second." Oh, and I was like, "What are you effing laughing at?" I'm like, hold on a second, just relax. We'll figure it out. But I've had those phone calls before too. And I've gotten in trouble because I have the kind of that chuckle, right? I'm always, even when shit goes wrong on job sites and stuff like that, it's not life or death, right? It's just, we'll figure it out. And move on. So
Nobody's going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that one.
Well, it's just because I guess the superintendents and all the people we're talking to are not used to someone accepting responsibility and with a plan to do something about it.
True.
And that's what you have to make clear is, no, we're going to get this right no matter what. And we can take the tone down, but I'm guessing that they've just heard, "Oh, not my problem." Click. And then they lose their minds. And that's not what good customer service is. And that's not what successful firms do.
Yep.
And that goes back to the way we respond, right? That's how the knee-jerk reaction and how you respond, and that's how you can save your butt sometimes.
So what other? All right, I'm sure with the 15-year anniversary, Trent, you've been going down the nostalgia train.
Right.
What else, kind of, as you've gone through this, have you picked up as lessons learned? Like you said, people have been asking, what, how did you get to this point? What are all and all those thoughts and rehashings of how you got to this point. What do you want to get out there as far as the things to do and to focus on, and the things not to do and not to focus on?
Yeah. I guess the biggest, if we go down the path of, hey, I want to start my own business, and I've had those emails and I respond to those, is one, you don't, I and my wife leveraged everything we had. We took credit card advances. You do whatever you can to kind of get through, right? We started June 1st. I didn't get our first paycheck until February of the following year, right? And so you're like 8 months deep into it. Right?
In case anyone's curious, the cash flow model on that does not look good.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're 8+ months without a paycheck, right? So you need to save as much as you can. I do jokingly, that nostalgia part is, when I first got it, it was an S7 or an S6 as a total station, like an R or a 5800 TSC3. I did go purchase 2 new vehicles before I quit my job, just because I needed that, to look like I still had a job. So I needed that to go and get the vehicles. So I went and got new vehicles so I could get through that. But I remember all of our expenses and my equipment and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I only got to do like $4,500 a month, right? I can do that. That should be no problem at all. Now, of course, here we are 15 years later. Now it's about $550,000 a month, and you're like, making sure you save, obviously making sure you have a lot of money to at least get through. It's no joke 6+ months. It depends on your business model too. Like if somebody's just going out and doing some lot surveys, or maybe doing some engineering topos type stuff, maybe it's not 6 months, maybe it's still 3 months probably. You're at least 3 to 4 months, even from an engineer or architect.
3
right?
is bare minimum, even in your garage by yourself. 3 minimum.
Yep. Yeah, the pay when paid thing is it's a serious thing. So save money, don't borrow money, because you're going to work your ass off, because like in my instance, right, I loaded up with credit card debts and all the other things I could do. There was no way I could let that fail. And then, so you're working your butt off to repay that stuff. And then, just, it's a shotgun effect when it comes to marketing, or figure out that niche that you want. But there's decent cash flow in construction, even as much as we all hate it, but the monthly cash flow is there. And then while you're doing that, at least you're working and you're doing some stuff, then you roll into those B&Ts and Alta type of clientele from there forward. But then, of course, we could go down a whole nother path, and that's the drone or the scanners, depending on your business model, right? Like how advanced you want to get into some of that technology. So, yeah.
So going back on the technology and making those purchases, when do you know whether it's best to purchase or lease? Does it matter on what kind of assets you have available to you? How do you make that decision?
Our decisions was tax-based decision. So it would be the ultimate, basically Section 179, and we write off and depreciate basically as soon as we buy it, right? Whereas a lease, if you're leasing something, you're only writing off that lease payment every month. You don't get the full depreciation. So those 2 type of questions would be more so your tax guy or tax advisor and that kind of stuff on those questions. But we take the full depreciation 179 as soon as we buy it the next tax year. So all of our stuff is purchases and not leases. And that's all the way down to our vehicles, because just to have that depreciation. Although I just did my taxes and things are getting a little weird now, even with depreciation stuff. So as a lot of our trucks, we buy them and then flip them kind of every 3 or 4 years or whatever like that. And so if we wrote off all the depreciation on year 1 and we sold it last year, now I'm paying income on that depreciation differences. So depreciation, tax laws are changing by the day, right? And so it's good. We've talked about it a lot of times on here. It's good having a very good accountant that can keep up with you. Mm-hmm. I talk to mine, we talk to always all the time, and I'm above average when it comes to businesses and understanding that kind of stuff. So I'm able to help him out with a lot of things, but having that tax guy is just as important as, a good survey equipment.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Like, what are those key relationships you need, like when starting a business or running a business? You mentioned a good tax guy. What are a couple other relationships that are key?
Your benefits package. So when you're working with, we have one where it's pretty much a one source when it's all of our benefits, our health, our dental, our vision. We have a separate one for a 401k, but having those that you can have those benefit packages with, and as a smaller firm, something like that, you want to get involved with like ACG or something like that, where you can get in with a group policy because you're a member of AGC or some of these other associations, because then you're going to get cheaper rates as a group rate being in some of these other associations. So, what might cost you $800 a year to be the ACG member or something, you're going to save on the back end because you're now part of a good plan. So, but definitely a tax guy. If you're not super business savvy when it comes to some of that, or you don't understand some of the laws, that's the most important. And then the benefit package is just as important, because if you're going to grow your business, you want to be able to retain employees, right? And so that's the benefit package it's kind of the hidden ghost sometimes when it comes to employees, right? That benefit package, but it's a necessary evil because it's, the wives or the spouses that are worried more about the benefit package than sometimes the employee, right? And so having that package as well, those are the most important. You can, a good attorney that you can just rely on, or a friendship that you can send.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You need a good attorney, whether it's contracts or you need, especially an attorney, even if it's somebody that's just referred to for a friend. But how you set up the entity is critical. Like, you just don't go and start Kent Grow surveying out of your home.
Too late.
I know.
Yeah. the last one on that. Yeah.
And that's where it, as much as you can, plan ahead of what your kind of vision is and what it's going to look like, and you want to shield yourself from liability as much as possible. I mean, like Trent said, he's got to put up some stuff and really leverage everything he's got for the business. But that doesn't mean that if it fails, it's, there's LLCs and a lot of smart things that you can do by creating entities and holding companies that can protect yourself and set yourself up for success. Because if you do snowball and it does go crazy, you may wish you could have gone back and talked to somebody smarter at the beginning.
Sure.
So definitely attorneys. On that,
the last attorneys, and then the last piece to that would be a really good relationship with an insurance agent, because when it even comes to, like, they got to be super organized, and because you're always sending certificate of insurance requests to your carrier, right? And so they've got to be responsive. Sometimes it's holding up payment, and so if you got an agent that's takes you 3 or 4 days to get a certificate of insurance, to get a payment, there's another piece of backlog, right? And so it's having that relationship. I've been fortunate. I'm with State Farm, and I've been with them prior to even starting my business, but I rolled in with them. I've been with State Farm since 1997. So we've had, and it's been pretty much my same. Has been my same agent since 97. And so you have that great relationship with an insurance agent. And so you're getting hit all the time with people trying to get you to swap, even down to my cell phone stuff. I'm like, I don't change. We're about relationships and not about dollars and cents sometimes. So
so all these things, these keys to success that we just talked about, and I'm sure over the course of your 15 years, you didn't know this. You didn't know all this stuff when you first started out, just like a lot of people don't know these things when they're starting out. And on that same note, I'm assuming you were more willing to take on work back then that maybe you wouldn't take on now, just because of maybe the risk or the liability or whatever. How do you determine now what type of projects are good for Diamondback Land Surveying?
A lot of it now, just through the years, I mean, it's definitely been going through it comes because a bulk of, so we do 20%, less than 20% construction. We do about 20% in altas. We do about 20% in boundary topo engineering design. And it's probably closer to 35%, I would say, boundary topo engineering design. And then the rest is kind of just mapping or land development type stuff. But definitely now it's payment history on a prior client sometimes.
Interesting.
That's how unfortunately, we do at some point, we have to fire clients throughout your business. If you're a good business person, you're going to review some of that stuff or have those relationships with the clients. But it's now, I mean, thankfully, because of the size that we've gotten and all the insurance policies that we have in place, there's not too much that we get to turn down, thankfully, turn down anymore. But in the beginning, I mean, we just weren't as heavy on the insurance as we do now. But sure. I don't even know back then. I don't think I really probably turned anything down because I'm always like, we'll figure it out type of thing. So that's always my MO, right? So we'll figure it out. And so I can't really say that I've turned down too much stuff other than more so just the clients that, are bad paying clients or just frustrating. You spend more time with a client because you can't either collect the money or there are changes on their back end. So,
yeah.
You said this before, and I have an answer to this, but I'm curious, Kent, you said it before of that was a bad client, or this is one of the worst clients we've had. What makes a bad client? And I'm going to take the not paying you off of the equation of obviously if they don't pay you, you can't work with them.
Yeah.
But let's say that they will pay you. But what are some of the other reasons why you wouldn't take a project, or what makes a bad client?
Well, for me, I think there's a number of different things. First of all, I think you have to look at the client's reputation, and, what they're doing, like what kind of services they provide, and make sure that their reputation is solid. But, just some clients are so much more needy than others and just drain your time, and just question after question after question, and then they start pushing a little further. Well, now can you just write this legal description for me, or can you just do this? Can you just do that? And they put you in a really tough spot because you don't want to say no, but at the same time, you kind of have to stand your ground. We're not in business to lose money.
Oh, sure.
And some clients put you in a position to lose money more than others.
So how do you balance that with good customer service?
Trent?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
That's the ultimate question, right?
Yeah.
I want to do, because you guys are both people pleasers.
Yeah.
You want to do the best job possible up to a point. And I think that's what could be really valuable for anyone listening is some examples of, maybe not too specific, but where is that point? Where does it go from I'm doing a really good job above and beyond my competition to this is now a liability for me, and I've already lost money, and now I'm going to lose more? Or where is that line?
I think that's a great question. And my answer to that would be it's like right out of the gate. You have to set the expectations right out of the gate. And as soon as that client starts to become a little high maintenance, I think like, hey, listen, we want to help you with this, but we're in business just like you are. And in order for us to do that, it's going to take this, whether it be a change order, what have you. But again, unfortunately, a big part of our job is educating the client.
There you go.
And I mean, I love educating the client, but there are some clients that as much as you educate them, it's like whatever you're saying is going in one ear and out the other, and they just become, a bad client.
Oh yeah, because I think that, like you said, you can. A lot of our job is to educate our clients, and I just don't think all of them want to be educated.
Sure.
Some want to learn more so they can, be a better client and get more out of whoever's providing them services, and others see it as, no, that's your job. Just give me what I need, and you should have thought all this when you gave me your price, and that's it.
100%.
And they don't want to learn anything. They don't care why. It's your problem, and
that's the bad client. 100% though. The ones that are open to hearing your perspective and, your education for that matter, those are the good clients. The ones that come back and say, hey, well, so-and-so would do this for me. Yeah. Those are the bad clients.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've gotten those.
Yeah. And, and sometimes as business, as business owners, wherever you are at whatever level as a surveying business, you get caught in that. I just need one more thing. And so you do the one more thing because you want to collect on the last $2,500 or whatever that you did, right? And so you end up in a little bit of a rabbit hole of like, okay, I'll do this so that I don't get screwed out of all the back stuff, right? And sometimes you get into that mix sometimes.
Or it's the guy that always has another big project coming.
Oh yeah, the carrots are the best.
The carrots. I mean, I'm a victim. It was Easter yesterday. I get it. The carrots, I'd chase after them, but man, like how long do you string yourself on just to, and then how big of a job is that?
Sure.
And are you really leveraging future? And a lot of people are going to say that's something you never do. You never leverage future profit for current cost and current extras. Like never do that, because then it's like Trent said, you just get into a rabbit hole. No pun intended.
Yeah,
carrots,
exactly.
but where you're just always chasing, and then you get to the point where you have to take that next job in order to make up for what you've already spent on the last one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a good business model.
I'm pretty confident that that is not a good business model. The other part that I would say is, as far as a client, is if they have a bad contract, or if they use a standard contract and don't have any means to negotiate or change terms. That's usually a red flag that they're probably not organized enough to handle issues, and they're going to blame you the first chance that they have.
Yep.
And if all they say is, here's the standard contract and we can't do anything with that, that's probably, you need to be very careful in that scenario, because it means more than, that means that they don't even really know what you're doing and some of the contractual issues that might come up. So
100%.
And that goes down to a whole nother path, because some states don't require written contracts to even do work, right? And so there's the whole, why there's important reasons to have contracts in place, no matter, whether your state requires it or not. And so
so let's go back to the first rules of starting a survey business is have a written contract in some form or fashion that spells out the terms and conditions for everything.
Yes.
Like we talk about it. We had Mr. Healy on a couple weeks ago talking about liability, and all that goes out of the window if you don't have a written contract.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think people might feel like it's intimidating, or they don't want to formalize issue. They want to be the guy that, let me just help you out, and a lot of times people don't understand, like, the insurance that comes with only comes with a contract. Like, you don't get the benefit of me screwing up and my insurance bailing you out if I don't have a contract, and a contract that which terms my insurance can support. Because my insurance company will tell me I signed a bad contract and good luck to you. And then you only really get, what I got in my bank account. And unfortunately, that's probably not going to cover the damage that may have been done by a mistake.
Right.
Totally agree. Sean, you sound really smart today. This conversation
it's almost like
this conversation's in your wheelhouse.
It's almost like this conversation is in my wheelhouse.
Who's that, Trent?
Camaro's yelling at one of the guys walking in the office.
Oh, and the other thing, every survey company should have an office German Shepherd.
Yes.
It's really good when sales guys come in the office too. It helps protect that.
You don't have to have that no soliciting sign. You just have a dog there.
It's funny. So let's talk about what I'm assuming is your most valuable asset, and that is, your employees, the human capital side of this. And you, Trent, probably, definitely as much, if not more than anybody, to promote the survey profession. Are you seeing any headway being made by all these efforts, whether it be you or, Elaine Ball and what she's got going on, and just, there's a lot of people doing a lot of different things. Are you starting to see any change?
Yeah, it's definitely baby steps. I mean, even when we talk, even at our own conferences, I went to 5 different conferences this springtime, and just was preaching the workforce development and outreach type things, right? And I went pretty much on my own dime. To these state associations, just to help spread the word. And so when you get into even our own state associations, and when you ask about, do you listen to podcasts, and there's 3 hands that go up. Do you know about Get Kids in the Survey? And there's 1 or 2 hands that go up, right? Or the Mentoring Mondays or the Wisdoms, that kind of stuff. When you're asking all of these questions just at our own people, at our own conferences, that stuff's just not even trickling down. And so I think it's going to take, I keep talking about it, it's a 10-year plan. Like when we talk about workforce development or other that kind of stuff, outreach, I mean, we've got such a long road ahead that it's, and we've talked about it before. Like it's the gains are 3, 4, 5 people in a region, right? That's a huge gain when it comes to, I think, coming to bringing an awareness to stuff, because one, yes, we need lots of people, but lots of people for our profession is 25, 30, 40,000 people over the next, 10 years, whatever, like that. So last thing we want to do is go, flood the market with 50,000 people in the next 5 years, right? Like, we're trying to kind of grow the profession organically and bring people awareness to it, but it's going to take a long time, but it is getting better. And you see a lot more on social media and stuff like that. But when you go to these outreach efforts, you do realize how far we are behind. Because my presentations always start like, how many of you know what an architect is, right? And they all raise their hand. How many of you know what an engineer is? And they all raise their hand. And then, of course, you get to the surveyors, and there might be one in the room. And so that's how I know we still have a long ways to go, because there's just there's not enough awareness when it comes to that stuff. So
yeah. Well, okay, so this might be a little too far on the other side, but how far do you go? Is there a saturated survey market? Has there ever been something like that? Have you ever thought about, like, I know it's never going to happen, but let's say that you just do so much outreach, there's too many. Isn't that a bad thing? Or is that a bad thing?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think
it'll ever happen. But
one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit is competition, and like you said, it's been a feast, and it's all purely based on demand.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're going to see on the other side of that anytime soon. But what does that look like? Should that be a concern for anybody?
And then it goes back. You could roll all the way back to defining surveying versus all of the stuff that we're doing with the BIMs and the drones, right?
Yeah.
Like, it goes back to that conversation of what is the traditional surveyor versus what is drones with LiDARs and scanners doing interior BIM work, right? And so, we could go down that rabbit hole, but I don't feel like there is going to be a saturated market, but I think everybody's concerned when they don't feel like it's working because there's, maybe on a viral post, there's, 150 likes or something, right? Like that is a quote unquote viral post if you realize it in the grand scheme of like a profession size. And so it's understanding like those are good numbers because we are such a small, we're such a small niche market. So it's just putting those expectations in content of like, that's a big gain. So,
and due to the fact that, we use this quote probably once every 6 episodes, maybe more.
Are we in a geospatial moment?
We're in a geospatial moment, buddy.
I knew it was coming.
Keith Masback. Got to give Keith credit for that one.
Absolutely.
So surveying is just really a small part of geospatial. There's so many different directions that folks can go these days.
Well, and I guess I understand that definitely the traditional surveyor is just they don't make them anymore, and they're not reproducing at the rate that they're falling off. But what about everything else? Is GIS and BIM model, is all those professions equally in demand for people?
I think so. Absolutely.
Is that what you're seeing, Trent, too?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's part of the. And I guess the GIS thing, right, would be. I'd be interested to know like the demographics of, say, the GIS profession, right? Because it's such a new last 25, 30 year profession, right? And so who was it that got in then? Say 30 years ago, what was the age or the demographics of them? Are we at a situation where we're aging out? And it's, we've always kind of talked about it with even like the survey numbers, right? Like 44% over the age of 61. Well, if you look at the data, most of them didn't get licensed till they're almost 40. And so it's not, you're a licensed surveyor for 25 years. And so of course you're getting a license later in life. And so there's always that everybody's going to be always aging out. Right. And so that's another part of the data that we don't really look at.
Well, the other question I would have is, if you're a traditional survey shop, like Trent, for example, I'd consider him traditional. Is he stealing talent from the non-traditional arm of geospatial? Is his talent pool strictly GIS professionals?
Right. No, because
No.
I was going to say I have 9 under 25, so I'm growing them within. So
yeah, so I mean, I guess that really goes to the meat of my question: where is that talent pool, and who are you pulling people? You got to be pulling them from somewhere. If you're not in Trent, you did a phenomenal job. The only person I know that's actually in the high schools talking to guidance counselors. But if you're not catching them before they hit algebra 2, you got to be pulling them from some other career path, construction or what is it?
You're stealing them from other companies.
Yes,
what you're doing.
Well, exactly. That's kind of my point. That's a stagnant model.
And if you can offer somebody a better quality of life and a career path and all the things that people want to have when they're in, when they care about what they do, and they don't currently have it, unfortunately, that person's probably going to leave.
Yeah,
but they're going to go to another surveyor.
Yeah.
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 So I guess the question is you got this finite group of people that understand and know this business, and those that are retiring are not being, that number is not being met by those who are getting into the business. Yeah. So obviously you have to go from outside of that pool.
Yeah.
Whether they go into some, if you consider it all geospatial and geo global, that's still the same bucket of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like Trent said, he develops from within. He hires these people that have zero survey experience and has a way of, getting them to buy in and love surveying and want to make it a career. And if you can pull that off, I mean, you can set yourself up for success.
Well, in the few minutes we have, I'd like to dig a little bit into the how that you just said.
Yeah.
How, you said somehow Trent's doing it, and Trent is a phenomenal person, genuine, all these things, but I'm pretty sure it's not his personality that's moving the needle there.
He's a pretty good golfer too.
Yeah,
not so much lately. Shit. I haven't been playing that much. So the how, right? The how starts with finding the right personality. The how starts with paying them a good wage that keeps them engaged. The how is offering them basically the career advancements, right? It's going to take years, and we have those conversations that it's going to take a while. And then it's offering them, like when we had the conference in Las Vegas last year, I think we had like nine or 10 of us at the actual conference, and that's getting them out there and networking with people. And that's always been the misnomer as well, is like, oh, don't send them to a conference because somebody's going to steal them, right? Well, Again, it goes back to the servant leadership style, being good, being energetic. We've talked about it at a few different conferences this spring as well. Like the culture of a state association or the culture of a business is how outreach is driven. If your association has no outreach passion, I went to one of those, and I won't say, but it was a 4-hour presentation of just like pulling my teeth out because there was like 14 people in the room, and none of them did anything about outreach. And so it starts with the culture. It starts with the business leader. It starts with the business leader hiring young guys that want, like you said, give them a chance and give them a chance to have a good career. And then, the flip side to that too is where we've been having a lot of conversations is going after other professions, or like, going after the military guys that are starting to transition. Those are ones that we want to start looking into as well, and finding those guys coming out of the military as a transition as well, because it's a good, solid work ethic, mature adult situation where they can maybe grow into the profession a lot faster is some of the avenues that we're working with as well. One of my neighbors is actually on like the USO board. He's a big military. He's big military recruitment for a casino that his grandfather, they all started the Boyd Gaming here. And so he's the military recruitment guy. So I'm having those conversations with him on how we can have those relationships with those transition counselors and that kind of stuff for guys coming out of the military. But it all starts with the culture for sure, Sean. And then it starts with paying them a decent wage that they feel like, they want to get out of bed for, right? Something different than the same, we start all of ours off at 22 to 25, just depends on, kind of the person. But it's, and so you got to pay above above industry standard type wages to be able to attract talent. And then of course, benefit packages and 401ks and, the whole kit and caboodle that all comes into a profession, right?
Yeah, hell, I gotta compete with Chick-fil-A.
But that's true.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely true.
18, 19 bucks an hour, benefits,
Yep.
401k, pay for college, all those things.
Yep.
I mean, hell, what would you do?
And they had to compete with In-N-Out Burger because they were the first to be way up there. So yeah,
And Sundays off. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right.
absolutely. But that's how it starts with, and I've had this conversation many times. It starts with us as business leaders, business owners, or basically business, hiring type people that can hire those people and create that culture within the company.
Well, it's funny because that exactly what Trent said just brings us right back to where we started with, okay, I realize I have to do that. I need to pay people a higher wage. Got to pay them 10% more. Now I got to hand my client a 20% price increase and still run a business. And,
Right.
Or if it's in like Trent does, mainly fixed fee type contracts, mainly lump sum. So those need to have, 5-10% more on the labor cost to them.
Sure.
And to be able to justify that and still continue to have a sustainable business.
100%.
It's a vicious circle.
Yeah.
But it's rewarding, right? It's worth it and it's rewarding. You go with the growing pains, and we have lots and lots of growing pains with all of ours under 25 right now. It's just, I've talked about it a few times, but the IMU and a GPS rod, right? They understand that, I can just take a shot with an angle to my rod, right? Well, that doesn't translate to a standard total station rod, and they still take the shot the same way. And you start to realize why all of our topos are kind of skews and weird angles, right? So there's those learning curves that you deal with inexperienced people, but you just have to do it. Somebody has to bite the bullet and do it at some point. And so,
Yeah. And it's going to take everybody. It's not going to take
absolutely
just Trent or just so-and-so or just so-and-so doing this. I mean, it's something that everybody needs to buy into. Or the majority, not everybody. You're not going to get everybody to buy into it, but the majority. And there are so many good resources out there. Like, I have always been a huge proponent of, like, the CST exam. If you can gear something towards that program, like the program's already set. What you should know after a year and a half, 2 years to take the CST one. So kind of gear things towards that. And then the CST 2 and CST 3. And at that point, that person's probably on the path to becoming licensed. So why reinvent the wheel? It's out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just use it.
And if more people had it, it would be more recognized.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
No question.
Yeah.
Before we wrap this up, I want to ask, go ahead, Trent.
2,500. Sorry, there's about 2,500 CSTs in the country right now. But yeah, it is a great benchmark especially for young hires. I mean, and that's, I preach it during every one of our meetings. It's like self-improvement. You go get Part 107. You go get your CST1, CST2. There's a monetary value behind it.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it's creating a better staff because they're engaged and they're wanting to at least bring themselves up into the profession and start to understand things. It's helped out tremendously when you get them to put their nose in the book and start to move on that CST path.
So on that, before we wrap this up, because I know we all got to get going, especially you, Trent, back to your nostalgia. I'm just curious, you're in 15 years. Do you have, what's the best success story of, okay, we get it, you and your wife are successful, you're awesome, do all kinds of crazy, great stuff. What's one of the best success stories of that bringing someone into the organization, into the profession that would have never had that opportunity without it, and now they're off and running?
And I've said it a few times on the podcast, but my biggest reward is when a staff member buys a house, because it proves that they've got a successful career, right? I mean, it's one of the pride and joys of being American is having home ownership, right? And so I always talk about that. That's one of my best days is when I can, I get the phone call for employment verification.
Yeah, that one.
They're on the last.
That's the one that I love. It's that.
Yeah.
Hey, just making sure this person is full-time employee. Yeah. Here's what they state their wage was, and all. I agree. That's the coolest phone call to get. Is that wouldn't have existed without you. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the best ones. We recently had one on the flip side of that. I had one that hung around for, I think he was here almost coming up on 9 years, and he retired from Diamondback. And so you got to that point. I think he retired when he turned 70. So on his 70th birthday, he retired. And so that's kind of cool as well.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of the flip side to have somebody to retire. But and then, of course, I got, Robert at my office as well. He's on his second career, and he's been with me. We have this year we're going to have 3 over 10-year employees. And Robert, I think Robert's at 13, Doug's at 12, and Rob will be at 10. The other guy who did retire, that would have been his 10th anniversary as well. But 3 over the age of at the 10-year mark. Yeah. And then, at one point we've added quite a few employees, but at one point we were like 80% over the 5-year anniversary mark. And so as we've added more employees, but that creating that culture and understanding that. But the most rewarding, we haven't had anybody. Rob's working through getting his license, and so that part would be pretty cool, because he was a situation where Rob started with us coming up on 10 years ago, but he was pretty much done with survey. He was going to move back to Pennsylvania. There was no money in survey. He wasn't, and he was pretty much checked out, and then got him to come on board, and then just gave him a whole breath of new life. And now he's finally, even after being with us for 10 years, he's finally realizing, shit, I got to get my shit in gear, even, at 40, whatever he is now, 42 or 41 or something like that. But, and then the flip side, we had Shane after last year's conference. He was working for the BLM, and he had a good career at the BLM. But when we were at the conference, he realized that there's a whole nother world out here, and he's so passionate about outreach and that kind of stuff, which is all of our company culture. And so he asked to come on board, and I found a spot for him. So it's there's a spot for everybody within somebody's company, one way or the other. But sure. Most rewarding is, for going back to your answers, most rewarding is when somebody buys a house for me. Yeah, because you've given them a stable life, stable career, a good profession, however you want to word it. But
yeah, for me it was I had a couple of folks get a stamp that I had to sign off on, and I knew I hired them when they just got their EIT, and I told it from the beginning, like, I'll let you stamp my forehead if you get that thing. They're only one time, but I'll let you stamp my forehead.
That's awesome.
I got a couple now, a couple of those young ones that are under 25. I jokingly tell them they're going to have their own business, at some point, and so that'll be kind of cool too. So I treat them, show them the way things should be done, and show them the way they should be treating employees and that kind of stuff. I'm not going to be disappointed if they leave to go start their own business at that point, right?
Yeah. I mean, you'll completely shut them out of the market, and
that's right,
and call all their clients ahead of time. But still, good for them. Very excited.
I think we've talked about it before, but there's there's competition, but in this small of a market, there's not really competition. It's mostly friends. And if you're in the professional networks, and you're involved and you're engaged in the profession, it's more friends than it is competitive clients type thing. So
yeah. Hey, that's a very, very healthy perspective. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
TK, you're the best, man. Anything else you want to get out there before we let you go? I know you got to get off to Mentoring Mondays.
Right. And if this was a live show, we'd tell everybody to hop on and participate. But as always, Mentoring Mondays is on Mondays. Check them out.
MentoringMondays.xyz, and of course, WisdomWednesdays.xyz.
Mm-hmm.
That one's we're on our last one for we're finishing up the first book this week.
Nice.
So this middle of April, but we're not going to kick that one back up until the fall, just because we have kind of low participation throughout the summer. And I'll do probably the same. I'm going to do that on mentoring as well. I might just do one a month during the summer. There's just, everybody's so busy during the summertime. It's the last thing I want to do. I watch the replay views, all that kind of stuff. It gets, there's not a lot of replay views even during the summer. So we'll probably take a break come middle of June or something like that and pick it back up in September. But no, parting words. I always tell people, shoot me an email. I'll respond. Sometimes you might have to shoot me twice, but because it's, especially if you're sending to my Mentoring Mondays email, that's usually, I don't check until usually the evening times or whatever, but I'm willing to help anybody. I've been fortunate to help mentor a couple of people throughout the country, just because it's hard for you to be able to reach out and ask for a mentor in your local area, right? When you want to be a competitor against them. So I'm always open to help guys out when it comes to that kind of stuff. If you need additional advice and that kind of stuff, so I'm an open book. I always sometimes I'm too much. People tell me, but there's never too much.
No, not at all.
Never too much TK.
Never too much TK.
I'm always in a better mood after I have a conversation with Trent. Why is that?
I think you're in a better mood usually when you have a conversation with most everybody.
Or maybe it's the beer.
There you go.
Maybe it's the beer.
One of the two. One of the two. All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for jumping on here with us. And
I love it.
You want to take an outro with some music here?
I'm going to get to that right now, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
Other than Trent's dog.
Adding value and building friendships.
That's right.
If anyone would like to be a guest on a future show or have any ideas for topics, shoot us an email at info@thegeoholics.com. This is Hardy. All She Left Was Me, available everywhere. Until next time, everyone, check out Mentoring Mondays and Wisdom Wednesdays. Most importantly, be safe and healthy.